A young girl vanished at Sunday school, leaving her mother's world shattered and desperate for answers. Years later, she visits the mountains in hopes of healing and closure. But instead, she makes a shocking discovery. Claire Whitmore sat in the corner booth of the cafe, her fingers wrapped tightly around a mug of lukewarm coffee. The steam had long since disappeared, much like her hope had over the past 3 years. She glanced at her watch, then toward the door. Right on time, as always, Evelyn Hart entered the cafe, bringing with her a gust of autumn air and a smile that seemed eternally hopeful despite everything. "Claire," Evelyn said, sliding into the booth across from her, "I'm so glad you called." Claire managed a weak smile. "Thanks for coming, Evelyn." The cafe near their old church had become their unofficial meeting place. Every few weeks they would sit at this same booth, drink the same coffee, and have variations of the same conversation. Evelyn had been Lily's Sunday school teacher until that fateful day 3 years ago. Now she was one of the few people who still seemed to care about finding Claire's daughter. "Any news?" Evelyn asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Claire shook her head. "Nothing. Detective Morrison called yesterday. They've officially moved Lily's case to the cold case unit." Her voice broke slightly on the last words. 3 years, and all they have are dead ends. Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed Claire's hand. "I'm so sorry, Claire. We won't give up, though. The church community is still praying, still posting flyers. Someone will remember something, or see something." Claire pulled her hand away gently. "Prayers," she said, a bitter edge creeping into her voice. "That's what we need more of, right?" Evelyn's expression shifted slightly, recognizing the familiar territory they were about to enter. "Claire, I know your faith has been tested." "Tested?" Claire interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My daughter disappeared from inside a church, Evelyn, during Sunday school. If there was ever a place she should have been safe, it was there." "God works in ways we can't always understand," Evelyn said softly. "Romans 8:28 tells us that all things work together for good to those who love God." "Please don't," Claire said, holding up her hand. "I've heard it all before. Everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. He's working behind the scenes." She shook her head. "The prayer team at church misses me, right?" "That's what you're going to say next? That I should rejoin the Saturday morning prayer group, as if an hour of praying will suddenly bring Lily home when 3 years of prayers haven't done anything?" Evelyn sighed. "I wasn't going to say that, Claire, but I do think community helps in times of grief, and yes, they do miss you." Claire looked out the window, watching people pass by on the sidewalk. If God listened to all of his people's prayers, Lily wouldn't have disappeared in his house. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Evelyn didn't respond immediately, allowing Claire the space to continue if she wanted to. After a moment, Claire turned back from the window, her eyes distant as she traveled back to that Sunday morning 3 years ago. "I dropped her off early that day," Claire said softly, 20 minutes before class started. "I wanted some quiet time in the sanctuary before the service began, before all the people and noise." She smiled sadly. "Lily was so excited. She had a new dress, pink with white polka dots. She twirled in it that morning while we were getting ready." Evelyn nodded, encouraging her to continue. "You weren't there yet," Claire continued. "Mr. Allen was cleaning the room. He said he'd keep an eye on her until you arrived. I trusted him. Everyone did." "Claire, the police cleared Mr. Allen completely," Evelyn said gently. "The CCTV footage showed he was in the main office when Lily disappeared." "That's just it," Claire said, frustration edging into her voice. "None of the cameras caught anything. Not her leaving, not anyone taking her. She just vanished. A quiet, cautious 7-year-old girl doesn't just wander off on her own, Evelyn. Someone took her, and those limited security cameras missed it." "I know," Evelyn said. "I know it doesn't make sense." Claire stared down at her coffee. "Nothing about that day makes sense. You said she seemed normal during Sunday school. Everything was fine. And then at pickup time she was gone, just gone." Her voice cracked on the last word. Evelyn studied Claire's face, the dark circles under her eyes, the hollowness in her cheeks. Claire, you look exhausted. When was the last time you ate a proper meal or slept through the night? I'm fine, Claire said automatically. You're not, Evelyn countered. You're empty, Claire, unfulfilled, unhealthy. I wish you would come back to church. The community there loves you. They want to support you. Claire took a deep breath. Actually, that's why I asked to meet today. I wanted to tell you in person that I'm trying something new. I don't trust the church anymore, Evelyn. I spent my whole life devoted to a religion that couldn't even protect my child. Evelyn's eyebrows rose in surprise. Something new? A holistic approach to healing, Claire said. It's a retreat up in the Colorado mountains. I've heard it can help with grief, with finding inner peace. Colorado? Evelyn asked, clearly surprised. Claire, we're in Oregon. That's quite a journey for a retreat. I need to get away, Claire said simply. Far away from here, from all the memories. Evelyn's brow furrowed with concern. Be careful, Claire. I've heard news about some of those holistic places and monasteries up in the mountains. Some of them are scams, preying on vulnerable people like... She stopped herself. Like people who are grieving. Like me, you mean? Claire said flatly. I just mean that some of these places exploit emotions in the name of healing without delivering real results, Evelyn continued. There have been news reports recently about police uncovering several cults up there, using illegal substances in their teas or concoctions. People think they're experiencing spiritual enlightenment, but it's just drug-induced hallucinations. Then they sold those drink as products to take home. Claire's expression hardened. The police can uncover those cults, but when it comes to finding missing children, they're useless. 3 years, Evelyn. 3 years of dead ends, and we're doing everything we can while my daughter is still out there somewhere. Evelyn reached for Claire's hand again. I understand your frustration, I do. Just promise me you'll be careful, okay? And know that I'm always here praying for you, whatever path you choose. Claire softened slightly. I know, thank you for that at least. She glanced at her watch again. I should go, my flight leaves in a few hours and I need to make it in time for the gondola lift to the retreat. They stood and Evelyn pulled Claire into a tight hug. Call me when you get back, okay? Let me know how it went. Claire nodded but made no promises. As they left the cafe and walked in opposite directions on the sidewalk, Claire couldn't help but feel she was walking away from her old life for good. Whether that was a positive step forward or just another dead end remained to be seen. The flight from Oregon to Colorado seemed to last forever, though in reality it was only about 2.5 hours. Claire stared out the window for most of it, watching the landscape change from green forests to snow-capped mountains. She had brought almost nothing with her, just a small backpack with essential clothing and toiletries. The retreat information had specified to pack light, emphasizing a minimalist approach to healing. After landing, she rented a car and drove toward the Colorado mountains, following the GPS directions to a small parking area at the base of a gondola lift. The autumn air was crisper here, thinner, making Claire feel slightly lightheaded as she stepped out of the car. She locked it, slipped the keys into her pocket, and approached the gondola station. Ticket for one, she said to the attendant, a weathered-looking man with kind eyes. Headed up to the village? He asked, printing her ticket. Claire nodded. I'm attending a retreat at one of the monasteries. The man's expression shifted subtly. Ah, which one? There are several up there. I'm not entirely sure, Claire admitted. The email just said someone would meet me in the village. The attendant handed her the ticket. Well, be careful up there. It's beautiful, but it can get isolated. Claire thanked him and boarded the gondola. As it climbed higher up the mountain, she could see several structures dotting the landscape, some resembling traditional temples, others more modern in design. The gondola eventually stopped at a small rural town that seemed frozen in time. The buildings were a mix of rustic wooden structures and stone temples, with people moving about in clothes that ranged from modern hiking gear to traditional religious robes. Claire stepped out of the gondola, backpack slung over her shoulder, and looked around. After a few moments of uncertainty, 2 men in monk robes approached her. They were younger than she expected, both with shaved heads and serene expressions. Ms. Whitmore, one of them asked. Claire nodded, surprised they knew who she was without introduction. "Welcome," the monk said, bowing slightly. "I am Brother Tenzin, and this is Brother Dondup. We are student monks at the monastery you will be staying at. We've been sent to escort you." "Thank you," Claire said, following as they began walking. "I wasn't sure exactly which monastery I was going to. The email wasn't specific." Father Chen assigns guests to different monasteries based on their specific needs for spiritual healing, Brother Tenzin explained. He felt our monastery would be particularly beneficial for your journey. They led her through the village and then onto a narrow path that wound even higher up the mountain. The air grew thinner, colder, and Claire pulled her jacket tighter around herself. The path took them through misty forests until they reached a clearing where a modest monastery stood, partially shrouded in fog. "It's so quiet," Claire commented, the silence almost pressing against her ears. "Yes," Brother Dondup nodded. "The silence helps to quiet the mind as well. Here, one can truly listen to one's inner voice." As they approached the monastery, Claire noticed something unexpected. Children. Several of them, all with shaved heads and wearing simple robes, were sweeping the courtyard. They moved methodically, silently, their young faces serious and focused. "I didn't realize there would be so many children here," Claire said, a strange feeling stirring in her chest as she watched them. Brother Tenzin smiled. "Our monastery is unique in that way. Many of our residents began their spiritual journey at a young age." They led her through the main entrance, where they were greeted by an older monk with a deeply lined face and kind eyes. "Father Chen," both young monks said in unison, bowing deeply. Father Chen's gaze fell on Claire. "Ms. Whitmore, welcome to our humble monastery. Thank you for choosing to spend your time of healing with us." Claire returned the bow awkwardly. "Thank you for having me, but I'm a bit confused. I thought I was going to a retreat center, not a monastery with children. Are there other guests like me?" Father Chen nodded. "We have several retreats running concurrently. As I mentioned in our correspondence, we assign guests to different monasteries, depending on their spiritual needs. Given your particular trauma and pain associated with losing your daughter, I believe this environment would be most conducive to your healing." Claire was taken aback, not remembering any such details in the emails she'd received. Still, something about Father Chen's calm presence put her at ease. "I see. Thank you for your thoughtfulness." "Brother Tenzin will show you to your room," Father Chen said. "Once you've settled in and changed into more suitable attire, you'll join our afternoon meditation session." Brother Tenzin led Claire down a simple corridor to a small, sparse room. A thin mattress on a low platform served as a bed, with a simple wooden dresser against one wall and a small window overlooking the mountains. "The bathroom is through that door," Brother Tenzin said, pointing. "You'll find monastery clothing in the dresser. Please change and meet me in the corridor in 15 minutes for your first meditation session." Once alone, Claire unpacked her few belongings and changed into the simple linen clothes provided, loose pants and a tunic in a soft grey colour. They were surprisingly comfortable, though quite different from anything she usually wore. 15 minutes later, Brother Tenzin led her to a large room where several other people sat on cushions in a circle. A monk sat at the head of the circle, eyes closed, completely still. "This is where you'll begin your healing journey," Brother Tenzin whispered. "Remember, there's no internet here, no phones, just silence and the opportunity to connect with your true self." Claire took a seat on an empty cushion, crossing her legs awkwardly and trying to mimic the posture of those around her. As the meditation began, she found her mind racing, filled with thoughts of Lily, of the strange monastery, of Evelyn's warnings. Quieting her mind seemed impossible. After what felt like hours but was likely only 45 minutes, the session ended. Claire's legs were numb, her back aching from the unfamiliar posture. "How was your first experience?" the meditation monk asked her, noticing her discomfort. "Difficult," Claire admitted. "I couldn't calm my thoughts." The monk smiled kindly. "That is normal for beginners. The mind resists stillness at first. With practice, you will find peace. By the end of the week, you will feel transformed. Many guests choose to extend their stay once they begin to experience the benefits. As Brother Tenzin led her back to her room, he explained the rules of the monastery. To maintain the peace and Zen atmosphere, your access to the monastery is limited. Some areas are reserved for the children's education, and others for deep meditation practices of the senior monks. You've been shown the areas where you're permitted. We recommend staying in your room between scheduled activities to maximize the benefits of solitude and reflection. Claire looked at him in dismay. Am I not supposed to talk to the other guests or explore the grounds? Minimal interaction is best for the first few days, Brother Tenzin explained. It helps to break the habits of distraction and social dependency that prevent true inner peace. As he left her at her door, Claire wondered how she would survive the week in such isolation, but she had come this far, invested in this journey. She would give it a chance, at least for a day or two. The silence in Claire's room was absolute. No traffic sounds, no humming of appliances, not even the distant voices of other people. Just stillness, broken only by her own breathing and the occasional soft rustle of wind outside her window. She sat on the edge of the thin mattress, taking in the simplicity of her surroundings. The walls were bare save for a single framed calligraphy that she couldn't read. The dresser contained only the monastery garments. There was no television, no clock, no books, nothing to distract from the purpose of reflection and meditation. Claire moved to the small window and looked out at the dramatic mountain landscape. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the courtyard below. She hadn't realized how high up they were until now. From this vantage point, she could see down into valleys shrouded in mist and across to other peaks in the distance. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and yet somehow unsettling in its vastness. Without a clock, she had no idea how much time had passed since her meditation session. Minutes, hours. Time already seemed fluid here, stretching and contracting in unusual ways. She tried to gauge the time from the sun's position, but found herself uncertain. How did people live like this, without the structure of scheduled hours? When the silence and inactivity became too much to bear, Claire decided to ignore Brother Tenzin's advice and leave her room. Surely a short walk down the corridor wouldn't violate any serious rules. She needed to move to see something other than these four walls. The hallway was empty and dimly lit by small wall sconces. Her soft-soled shoes made no sound on the polished wooden floor as she walked slowly, admiring the craftsmanship of the building. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was excessive or decorative without reason. As she turned a corner, Claire nearly collided with a line of children walking in formation. She quickly stepped back against the wall, observing them as they passed. There were perhaps a dozen of them, all with shaved heads dressed in identical robes. They walked silently, eyes downcast, following a slightly older boy who led them. Claire estimated most of them to be around 10 years old, though their serious expressions made them seem older somehow. What struck her most was their demeanor. There was no childish fidgeting, no whispered conversations or stifled giggles. Their faces were impassive, neither happy nor sad, just empty, like they'd been drained of all normal childhood emotions. The children turned down a corridor that Claire recognized as one of the restricted areas Brother Tenzin had pointed out. She watched them disappear around the corner, a strange uneasiness settling in her stomach. Something about seeing children so subdued, so lacking in the vibrant energy that should define childhood, disturbed her deeply. They're so different from children back home, she thought to herself, so controlled, so empty. Claire quickly chastised herself for the thought. Who was she to judge another culture's practices? These children were being raised in a spiritual tradition that valued silence and mindfulness. Perhaps what she saw as emptiness was actually peace, something she herself had come here seeking. Still, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling as she watched the last child disappear down the forbidden corridor. Their silent, orderly procession reminded her painfully of Lily, though usually quiet, was always vibrant when surrounded by people she knew well, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and mischief, even in her shyer moments. Lost in these thoughts, Claire was startled by a voice directly behind her. "They aren't supposed to be observed." Claire spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. A woman stood there, perhaps in her mid-40s, with short, salt-and-pepper hair and tired eyes. Unlike Claire, who was still awkwardly adjusting to the monastery garments, this woman wore them with the ease of familiarity. "I'm sorry," Claire stammered. "I was just walking and—" "It's fine," the woman interrupted with a small smile. "I've been watching them too. I'm Nora, by the way. This is my 5th day here." "Claire," she replied, relief washing over her at finding someone to talk to. "It's my first day and I was starting to feel a bit isolated." Nora nodded understandingly. "The meditation sessions are still challenging for me, and staying still in my room between sessions?" She shook her head. "Nearly impossible. The silence gets to you after a while." Claire glanced nervously down the hallway. "The monk who showed me to my room said we shouldn't interact with other guests." "They say that to everyone," Nora said with a dismissive wave. "But honestly, I think some human connection is necessary. Want to come to my room? I have a little stash of tea I brought with me. Not the weird herbal stuff they serve here, but actual black tea." Despite the warning bells in her mind, Claire found herself nodding. The prospect of conversation with another person, especially someone who seemed as out of place as she felt, was too tempting to resist. Nora's room was identical to Claire's in layout, though she had managed to make it slightly more personalized with a small photo frame on the dresser and a colorful shawl draped over the foot of the bed. "They let you keep personal items?" Claire asked, nodding toward the frame. "Not officially," Nora admitted, filling a small electric kettle she'd hidden in her dresser drawer. "But I couldn't come here without a picture of my mother." She handed the frame to Claire. It showed an older woman with Nora's same sharp features, though her expression was considerably harsher. "She passed away last month," Nora explained, setting out 2 simple cups. "That's why I'm here, trying to find peace, closure, whatever you want to call it." As the water heated, they sat cross-legged on cushions at a low table on the floor. Claire felt a knot in her throat loosening. It had been so long since she'd had a simple, human conversation that wasn't about investigation updates or well-meaning, but empty condolences. "I'm sorry about your mother," Claire said sincerely. Nora's expression darkened slightly. "It's complicated. She was difficult, abusive, honestly, but there's still this attachment, you know. Even in death, she's got her hooks in me, emotionally speaking. I came here to heal my inner child, as they say." She poured the hot water over the tea bags. "What about you? What brought you to this particular brand of spiritual enlightenment?" Claire took a deep breath. "My daughter, Lily. She disappeared 3 years ago. From a church, actually, during Sunday school." She swallowed hard. "That's why the whole religious aspect of this place is a bit ironic for me." "Oh, Claire," Nora said, her eyes filling with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine what that's like." "The not knowing is the worst part," Claire admitted. "If I had a body to bury, at least there would be closure. But this, it's like living in suspended animation. I can't move forward, can't go back." Nora reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "And the police?" "Cold case now," Claire said bitterly. "They've given up, essentially." "Do you have a picture of her?" Nora asked gently. Claire sighed. "On my phone, which they took when I arrived." She was blonde like me, with these incredible blue eyes. Really vivid blue, almost electric. She was such a bubbly child at home, but shy with strangers. She smiled sadly at the memory. She'd be 10 now. Nora's cup paused halfway to her lips. "Blue eyes, you said?" Claire nodded. "Yes, why?" "It's probably nothing," Nora said slowly. "But since I arrived, I've noticed one of the children here who has drawn attention because of her eyes. They're blue, really striking against her shaved head. The monks mentioned that everyone asks about her." Claire's heart skipped a beat. "What's her name?" "This girl?" "Ilara," Nora said. "At least that's what I heard them call her. She's very quiet, obedient, but 2 days ago she got in trouble. She was caught whispering with some friends while they were lining up. The punishment was harsh. 5 strikes on the hands with a stick, and she had to sweep the entire corridor." Claire's stomach turned. They hit the children here. I didn't expect that kind of discipline. Nora shrugged. Different monasteries interpret Buddhist teachings in their own ways, often blending in other philosophies too. Many of them believe in strict discipline as a consequence for breaking rules. It's meant to teach mindfulness, supposedly. Claire couldn't reconcile the image of peaceful meditation with the striking of a child's hands. "I'd like to see this girl," she said quietly, not even sure why she felt drawn to a child who likely had nothing to do with Lily. Perhaps it was just the maternal instinct she'd been suppressing for 3 years, suddenly awakened in this strange place. "You will, I'm sure," Nora said, "at the group meditation or meal times. Just be careful not to stare too obviously. The monks are always watching, especially the newer guests." They finished their tea in companionable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Nora glanced toward the window. "You should probably head back to your room soon. They'll be coming around for the evening chanting session, and they'll check your room first." Claire nodded, rising reluctantly. "Thank you for this. It's nice to know I'm not the only one finding this adjustment challenging." "Any time," Nora said with a smile. "We outsiders have to stick together, right?" As Claire made her way back to her own room, her mind was buzzing with new thoughts. A girl with striking blue eyes in a monastery up in the mountains, thousands of miles from where Lily disappeared. It was absurd to make any connection, and yet she couldn't help but feel a flutter of something dangerously close to hope. True to Nora's prediction, barely 10 minutes after Claire returned to her room, there was a soft knock at her door. A different monk than before, older, with deeply set eyes, stood in the hallway. "It is time for evening chanting and teaching," he said simply. "Please follow me." Claire followed him through a series of corridors and out into an open courtyard she hadn't seen before. The space was surrounded on all sides by the monastery buildings, creating a sheltered area that seemed to amplify the mountain silence. Simple cushions were arranged in neat rows, facing a slightly elevated platform where several senior monks were already seated. As other retreat participants filed in, Claire spotted Nora entering from another doorway. They exchanged brief glances, but maintained their distance as instructed. Claire took a seat near the front, directly facing the platform where Father Chen now sat. To his left were several adult monks, and to his right were the children, the monastery's young apprentices. The ceremony began with a low, rhythmic chanting that seemed to vibrate through the thin mountain air. Claire closed her eyes, trying to follow along with the unfamiliar sounds and cadence. The voices of the children blended with those of the adults, creating a haunting harmony that rose and fell like waves. When she opened her eyes again, her gaze was immediately drawn to a child seated to the right of Father Chen. Unlike the others who sat with eyes closed in deep meditation, this child's eyes were open, staring straight ahead. They were blue, strikingly vividly blue, set in a delicate face framed by a completely bald head. Claire's breath caught in her throat. This must be Alara, the girl Nora had mentioned. From this distance, she couldn't make out every detail of the child's face, but something about her profile, the curve of her cheek, the set of her small jaw, sent a jolt of recognition through Claire's body. She tried to look more closely at the girl's hands, remembering what Nora had said about the punishment. From her position, she could just make out what appeared to be faint red marks across the child's palms. Suddenly aware that she had completely lost track of the chanting, Claire glanced around guiltily. Her eyes met those of Father Chen, who was watching her with a strange, unreadable expression. Embarrassed, Claire quickly lowered her gaze and tried to refocus on the ceremony, but the pull to look at the blue-eyed girl was too strong. After a few moments, Claire risked another glance. This time, the girl was looking directly at her. Their eyes locked across the courtyard, and the child's chanting stopped abruptly, her small mouth falling slightly open in what looked like surprise or recognition. Claire felt her heart racing. The girl looked so much like Lily. Older, yes, and without the blonde hair Claire had described to Nora, but the shape of her eyes, the small nose, the determined set of her chin, it was uncannily similar. But it couldn't be Lily, could it? Claire told herself she was seeing what she wanted to see, projecting her missing daughter onto this random child, because of a coincidental eye color. With effort, Claire forced herself to look away and rejoin the chanting. The rhythm had changed, becoming slower and more hypnotic. She tried to lose herself in the sound, to empty her mind as she'd been instructed earlier that day. But her thoughts kept returning to the blue-eyed girl, to the impossibility of finding Lily here, in this remote monastery, on the other side of the country, from where she'd disappeared. When the chanting finally ended, Father Chen began to speak, his voice gentle but authoritative. He spoke of inner peace, of letting go of attachments, of finding the true self beneath layers of worldly desires and pain. Claire tried to focus on his words, but they seemed to float past her without landing. At the conclusion of his teaching, Father Chen opened the floor for questions. Claire raised her hand without fully realizing what she intended to ask. Father Chen nodded in her direction, but before she could speak, 2 monks appeared at his side. They were the same ones who had escorted her to the monastery earlier, brothers Tenzin and Dondup. They leaned down, whispering something urgently in Father Chen's ear. His expression changed slightly, a small furrow appearing between his brows. He stood abruptly. "I apologize, but we must conclude our session early this evening," Father Chen announced to the gathered group. "Please return to your quarters for reflection. Claire," he added, addressing her directly, "if you have a question, you may approach me privately later." Father Chen then gestured to the children, who rose in perfect unison and began filing out of the courtyard. Claire watched as the blue-eyed girl, Ilara, was led away with the others. However, before the girl disappeared through the doorway, the 2 monks who had whispered to Father Chen intercepted her, separating her from the group. Claire watched with growing concern as they led Ilara in a different direction from the other children. The remaining monks guided the retreat participants toward the dining hall for the evening meal. Claire followed reluctantly, glancing back over her shoulder to see where they were taking the girl, but they had already vanished from sight. In the dining hall, a simple vegetarian meal was served in complete silence. Claire sat at a communal table, mechanically lifting food to her mouth without tasting it, her mind racing with questions and suspicions. Across the room she spotted Nora, who gave her a meaningful look that seemed to ask, "Did you see her?" Claire managed only a few bites before the weight of her thoughts overwhelmed her appetite. She quietly excused herself, indicating to the attendant monk that she needed to use the restroom. With a nod, he pointed her in the direction of the facilities. As Claire walked toward the restrooms, she found herself passing through the Zen garden she had glimpsed earlier from her window. In the fading evening light, the carefully raked gravel patterns created a sense of fluid movement around the strategically placed stones. It was beautiful, peaceful, and on the other side, she knew, lay the restricted area where she had seen the monks take Ilara. Just as she was admiring the garden's tranquility, a sharp sound cut through the silence, a crisp slap, followed by what sounded like a muffled whimper. Claire froze, listening intently. Another slap rang out, and this time she was certain it was coming from beyond the garden, in the restricted area. Her heart racing, Claire glanced around to ensure she was alone, then quickly moved through the Zen garden toward the sound. She knew she was violating the monastery rules, but something deeper than curiosity was driving her, a protective instinct she hadn't felt since Lily's disappearance. At the edge of the restricted area, Claire hesitated only briefly before slipping through an ornate wooden doorway. She found herself in a smaller, more secluded courtyard, partially hidden from the main buildings by a row of carefully trimmed bushes. There, in the center of the courtyard, knelt Ilara, her small hands extended palm up before her. Standing over her was an older monk Claire hadn't seen before, his face stern as he held a thin bamboo stick. As Claire watched in horror, he brought the stick down sharply across the girl's outstretched palms. "This is your 5th strike," the monk said, his voice eerily calm. "You were not devoted to your meditation and chanting earlier. You broke concentration and looked at the visitors. This lack of discipline dishonors our teachings." Ilara's face remained composed despite the obvious pain, though a single tear tracked down her cheek. "Please," she said softly. "I only thought I recognized the woman. She seemed like my—" Before she could finish, the monk struck her hands again, causing Claire to gasp involuntarily. "Now you will receive no food until tomorrow for speaking up," the monk continued. Tonight, you will complete an extended meditation session and memorize the passages from the script I have selected. There will be no break time, no rest until you have demonstrated your commitment. Claire pressed herself against the wall, her mind reeling from what she had just heard. The girl had recognized her. She had tried to say something about it and had been punished for even looking during the ceremony. Could it really be possible? Could this child actually be Lily? The monk was guiding Ilara away now, his hand firmly on her shoulder, as they walked toward a set of stairs that led downward, disappearing beneath the courtyard level. Claire watched carefully, noting which direction they took. Not up to where the children's quarters presumably were, but down to some lower level of the monastery she hadn't been shown. Just as they disappeared from view, Claire felt a hand on her shoulder and nearly screamed. Claire spun around, heart pounding in her chest. Standing behind her was a young monk she didn't recognize. He seemed younger than brothers Tenzin and Dondup, perhaps in his early 20s, with a kinder face than many of the others she'd encountered. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "This area is restricted for guests." I'm sorry," Claire stammered, trying to regain her composure. "I thought I heard something." The monk's expression shifted slightly. "You should return to the dining hall and help the community clean up. It's part of our practice, supporting each other, learning to live harmoniously through service." He tilted his head, studying her face. "What exactly were you doing here?" Claire decided to be direct. "I saw a girl being punished. She was being hit with a stick for looking at the guests during the meditation ceremony." The monk sighed. "Ah, you must mean Ilara. She was a difficult one. Father Chen said her eyes held both the ocean and the sky, and that she was born in the year of the dragon, which would explain her nature. She has broken rules before. Discipline is part of the path to enlightenment." "Discipline is one thing," Claire said, unable to hide her distress. "But hitting a child for making eye contact seems extreme." The monk hesitated, then gestured for her to follow him. "Come with me. Perhaps I can answer some of your questions. You seem troubled." He led her to a small room that appeared to be an office of sorts, a simple desk, 2 cushions, and shelves lined with scrolls and books. Claire sat on one of the cushions, while the monk closed the door behind them. "I am Brother Kelsang," he introduced himself. "I work closely with our younger residents. What exactly did you see in the courtyard?" Claire described what she had witnessed: Ilara's punishment, the monk's harsh words, the mention of withholding food. As she spoke, she studied Brother Kelsang's face, looking for any reaction that might indicate whether her suspicions were justified or merely the desperate hopes of a grieving mother. "And then I saw them take her down a staircase," Claire concluded. "Where does that lead?" Brother Kelsang's expression became guarded. "There are meditation rooms below. Some are used for disciplinary reflection." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You seem particularly concerned about Ilara. May I ask why?" Claire took a deep breath. "She reminds me of someone. My daughter, who disappeared 3 years ago, and during the... Ilara said she recognized me too." "I see," Brother Kelsang said, his voice neutral. "And you believe this child might be your daughter?" "I don't know," Claire admitted. "But her eyes, they're the same unusual blue as my Lily's, and there was something in the way she looked at me." Brother Kelsang was silent for a moment, then rose and walked over to a small table where a teapot rested. "Would you like some tea? It's ginkgo, good for centering the mind." Claire nodded, watching as he poured 2 small cups. "Can you tell me about Ilara? Where did she come from? How long has she been here?" Brother Kelsang handed her a cup before sitting back down. "Ilara came to us as an orphan. She was homeless, living on the streets when a stranger brought her to our monastery. Father Chen took her in, as he has with many children who had nowhere else to go." "When was this?" Claire pressed. "I'm not certain," Brother Kelsang said, not meeting her eyes. "I haven't been here that long myself." Claire sensed he was being evasive, and no one ever came looking for her. No family. "Not that I'm aware of." He gestured to her cup. "Please drink, it will help calm your mind." Claire took a sip of the tea, which had a bitter, earthy taste. "I should be more committed to the practices here," she said carefully. "I've paid for this retreat, and I should give it a real chance, a few days at least, to prove its value to myself." Brother Kelsang seemed relieved by this change in direction. "Exactly. The first days are always the most challenging. The mind resists stillness, questions everything." He stood up. "I should return you to your room now. It's getting late, and tomorrow begins early with dawn meditation." As they walked back through the corridors, Claire felt an increasing heaviness in her limbs and a slight fog settling over her thoughts. By the time they reached her room, she was struggling to keep her eyes open. "Rest well," Brother Kelsang said, closing her door. Claire barely made it to her bed before a wave of exhaustion overtook her. As consciousness slipped away, one clear thought managed to form: the tea. There had been something in the tea. Claire woke with a violent lurch, her body convulsing as nausea gripped her stomach. Disoriented and dizzy, she stumbled to the small bathroom attached to her room and vomited into the toilet. The dark liquid that came up looked nothing like the simple dinner she'd eaten or the tea she'd consumed. Her head pounded, and memories of the previous evening came back in disjointed fragments, and it was hard to remember what happened to her. The blue-eyed girl, the punishment, Brother Kelsang and his strange tea. "What was that?" she whispered to herself through her foggy mind. Claire rinsed her mouth and splashed cold water on her face, trying to clear her head. The small clock in the bathroom, the only timepiece she'd seen since arriving, showed it was just after 3 a.m. She'd been unconscious for hours. Unable to return to sleep and still feeling unsteady, Claire decided to leave her room again. The corridors were silent and dimly lit, giving the monastery an eerie, suspended quality. As she walked without any particular destination, Claire found herself in a small sitting area with windows overlooking the mountains. There, silhouetted against the starlit sky, sat a familiar figure. "Nora," Claire called softly. Nora turned, surprise registering on her face. "Claire, what are you doing up at this hour?" Claire joined her on the window seat, drawing her knees up to her chest against the pre-dawn chill. "I think I was drugged," she said without preamble. "One of the monks, Brother Kelsang, gave me ginkgo tea after I saw something I shouldn't have." "What did you see?" Nora asked, her eyes widening. Claire told her everything: the punishment she'd witnessed, Ilara's attempt to say she recognized Claire, the staircase leading downward, and finally, the strange conversation with Brother Kelsang and the tea that had knocked her unconscious. "I can barely remember getting back to my room," Claire finished, "and when I woke up I was sick. I threw up something dark that wasn't food. It had to be the tea." Nora frowned deeply. "That's not normal. I've been on many spiritual retreats, and ginkgo tea shouldn't make you sleepy or forgetful. It's usually used to improve memory and focus." She placed a hand on Claire's arm. "Claire, do you think that girl could really be Lily, your daughter?" "I don't know," Claire admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "It seems impossible. And yet, there's something about her. The way she looked at me, like she knew me, and her eyes are exactly like Lily's." A soft noise from down the corridor interrupted their conversation. Both women tensed, listening as the sound of hushed voices grew closer. "Someone's coming," Nora whispered. "We should hide." They ducked behind a large decorative screen just as two figures entered the sitting area. In the dim light, Claire recognized one of them as Brother Kelsang, the monk who had given her the tea. The other was a man she hadn't seen before, dressed not in monk's robes but in dark, ordinary clothes. "Father Chen is becoming a problem," Brother Kelsang was saying, his voice low and urgent. "He no longer shares our vision. He's stopped taking in new children, and I believe he was the one who arranged for the mother of the girl to come here." Claire's heart skipped a beat. The mother of the girl, could he be referring to her? "Are you certain?" the man in dark clothes asked. "I overheard him speaking to Brother Dondup. He's been having doubts for months now. I think he meant for her to recognize the child. The timing is too convenient." "The woman is asleep now in her room. The tea will make her just sick enough that she won't be able to endure tomorrow's meditation sessions, or ask questions or look around." The man cursed softly. "This complicates things. We'll need to move soon. Get rid of Father Chen and the girl before the woman realizes what's happening." Claire and Nora exchanged horrified glances from their hiding place. They were talking about murder, planning to kill both Father Chen and Ilara. The two men moved on, their voices fading as they headed toward another part of the monastery. When they were sure it was safe, Claire and Nora emerged from their hiding place. "Did you hear that?" Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "They're going to kill them." "Claire," Nora said slowly, "I think you're right about Ilara. I think she is your daughter. That's what they meant about arranging for the mother of the girl to come here." "But how did you find out about this place? How did you know to come here specifically?" Claire tried to remember. "It was an email. I received an invitation to this retreat specifically, but I don't understand. Father Chen is just a monk. He lives here in isolation. How would he have access to email to the outside world? How would he know about Lily?" "He must have help on the outside," Nora reasoned. "Someone who could contact you, arrange everything." "We need to get to Ilara and Father Chen," Claire said decisively. "We need to warn them and get out of here. But first, we need to find a phone, call the police." Nora nodded grimly. "Let's go." Moving silently through the pre-dawn darkness, Claire and Nora retraced the path Claire had taken the previous evening. They reached the Zen garden and paused, listening intently for any sign of movement. "There," Nora whispered, pointing to a faint light moving near the restricted area. They crept closer, staying low behind the carefully arranged stones of the garden. Brother Kelsang had returned, this time with a different man in dark clothing. They watched as the two men disappeared down the staircase where Claire had seen Ilara being taken. "They're going for her," Claire said, her voice tight with fear. "We have to stop them." "How?" Nora asked. "We're just two women against who knows how many of them, and we don't even have a weapon." "We need to call the police," Claire insisted. "There must be a phone somewhere." "The supply truck," Nora said suddenly. "I saw it arrive yesterday evening. It might still be here, and the driver would have a phone." They changed direction, moving toward the rear of the monastery and through the set of long stairs to the lower part of the monastery where deliveries were made. As they rounded the corner, they saw the truck, a medium-sized delivery vehicle with the logo of a regional supply company. A man was loading empty crates into the back, preparing for an early departure. Claire approached him quickly. "Excuse me, do you have a phone we could use?" "It's an emergency." The driver looked startled to see two women in monastery clothes approaching him at this hour. "What's going on?" "Please," Nora said urgently. "There are children in danger here. We need to call the police." The driver hesitated only briefly before reaching into his pocket and producing a smartphone. "Here, but make it quick. I'm not supposed to interact with the residents." Claire dialed 911 with shaking fingers. When the operator answered, she spoke rapidly, explaining their location and what they had overheard. "They're planning to kill a monk and a child. They've already taken the girl, and they're moving her now. Please, you have to send someone quickly." "Ma'am, I understand your concern," the operator responded. "I'm dispatching officers to your location, but it will take at least 15 minutes for them to reach you. Please stay on the line and find a safe place to wait." "We don't have 15 minutes," Claire exclaimed. "They're taking her away now." The truck driver, who had been listening to Claire's side of the conversation, stepped forward. "I can help. Get in the truck. I'll hide you in the back before anyone sees you." Nora shook her head. "Claire can go with you, but I need to warn Father Chen. His life is in danger too." "That's too dangerous," the driver argued. "Let the police handle it when they arrive." "There's no time," Nora insisted. Before they could resolve the argument, a shout from nearby made them all freeze. One of the men in dark clothing had spotted them and was now pointing in their direction. Behind him, Brother Kelsang emerged from the building, carrying what appeared to be a small, unconscious form wrapped in blankets. "It's Ilara," Claire gasped. "They have her." Without further discussion, the driver pulled both women toward his truck, practically shoving them into the back before slamming the doors shut. Through a small window, They watched as the men hurriedly placed Ilara in a separate vehicle and sped away toward the road that led down the mountain. "Follow them," Claire urged as the driver jumped into the cab and started the engine. "I'm trying to keep you safe," he protested, but began driving anyway, maintaining a careful distance behind the other vehicle. As they descended the winding mountain road, Claire stayed on the phone with the 911 operator, updating their position and the situation. "They have a child," she repeated. "She's unconscious. They're heading down toward the village where the gondola is." "Officers are on their way up the mountain now," the operator assured her. "They'll intercept the vehicle. Additional units are responding to the monastery to secure the location and check on the monk you mentioned." When they reached the village, they saw flashing lights ahead. Police cars had indeed set up a roadblock, stopping the vehicle with the unconscious child. Claire, Nora, and the driver pulled up just as officers were ordering the men out of their car at gunpoint. "That's them," Claire called to the nearest officer as she jumped from the truck. "They have a little girl in there. She's drugged." The police quickly secured the two men, handcuffing them while a paramedic approached the vehicle to check on the child. Claire rushed forward as they carefully lifted Ilara from the back seat, her small body limp and her head still shaved. "Is she okay?" Claire asked desperately. "She's alive," the paramedic confirmed. "Pulse is steady. Looks like she's been sedated. We'll need to get her to a hospital right away to determine what they gave her." One of the officers approached Claire and Nora. "We need to take your statements about what happened up there. Can you both come to the station?" "What about Father Chen?" Nora asked urgently. "There's still someone at the monastery who was planning to kill him." The officer nodded. "We have teams securing the monastery now. They've been informed of the threat." Just then, one of the detained men's phones began ringing. The officer answering the call put it on speaker, allowing them all to hear the voice on the other end. Brother Kelsang. "It's done," he said without preamble. "The concoction has been administered in his sleep. Father Chen will be found dead during morning prayer, appearing to have suffered a heart attack. No one will suspect." Claire gasped. "That's what he did to me. He gave me something in that tea last night that made me fall asleep and feel sick when I woke up. I still remembered parts of what happened." The officer quickly radioed his colleagues at the monastery with this new information. They need to find Father Chen immediately and get medical attention for him, possible poisoning. The paramedics had loaded Ilara into an ambulance and were preparing to leave. "We're taking her to Memorial Hospital," one of them told Claire. "You can follow us there." "I'm her mother," Claire said, the words feeling strange and yet completely right on her tongue. "I need to be with her." The officer nodded. "We can take your statements at the hospital then. And we'll need to collect a urine sample from you as well, ma'am, to identify what substance was given to you." As the two men were placed in police cruisers and the scene secured, Claire turned to Nora and the truck driver. "Thank you both. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't helped us." "I'm just glad we were in the right place at the right time," the driver said. "I deliver supplies to that monastery every week, but I always felt something was off about it. Now I know why." Claire climbed into a police car that would follow the ambulance to the hospital, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and hope. After 3 years of emptiness, she might finally have found her daughter. But what had those years done to Lily? And would she even remember her mother, or the life she had before? The hospital waiting room was a stark contrast to the monastery. Bright fluorescent lights, the constant beeping of machines, and the hurried movements of medical staff. Claire sat on an uncomfortable plastic chair, answering questions from a detective while periodically glancing toward the hallway where they had taken Ilara. "So you received an email invitation to this retreat specifically?" the detective was asking, making notes on his tablet. Claire nodded. "Yes, it came about a month ago. It mentioned spiritual healing for those who had suffered loss, which seemed perfect for my situation." "And the email appeared to be from Father Chen himself?" "That's what it said, yes. There was a signature with his name at the bottom." The detective nodded thoughtfully. "According to the officers at the monastery, Father Chen has been transferred here as well. They found him unconscious but still alive. The medical team is working on removing the toxin from his system now. Will he be okay? Claire asked. They think so. They caught it early enough. The detective set down his tablet. We've identified the two men who were taking the girl, Ronald Myers and Kavin Perkins, both known associates of a man named Alex Ram. Does that name mean anything to you? Claire shook her head. Alex Ram is the leader of a trafficking organization that we've been tracking for several years, the detective explained. He's been kidnapping children and placing them in fake monasteries that he builds and staffs with his own people. Not real monks, just associates in disguise. But why? Nora asked, joining the conversation from where she sat nearby. What do they gain from that? Money, primarily, the detective said. Spiritual healing tourism is a multi-million-dollar industry now. These fake monasteries charge thousands for authentic retreat experiences. The children are drugged, hypnotized, and trained to perform convincing roles as young apprentices. It creates an atmosphere that wealthy spiritual tourists find compelling and worth paying for. Claire felt sick at the thought. So all those children at the monastery? Most of them were abducted, yes, the detective confirmed. Some from as far away as Europe and South America. This is part of a global operation. Small children are easier to control, especially with the drugs they use. And in the past cases we've handled, we've found that they even manipulate young adults through a combination of drugs and psychological conditioning disguised as meditation rituals. It's like a cult, Nora said quietly. Exactly like a cult, the detective agreed. Ram is the leader, and his followers are fiercely loyal, willing to kidnap children or commit other crimes for him. Have you caught him? Claire asked. The detective shook his head. Not yet, but with the information from these arrests and hopefully from Father Chen when he recovers, we're closer than we've ever been. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Ms. Whitmore, Ilara is awake now. She's asking for you. Claire's heart leapt into her throat as she stood. Can I see her? Yes, but just for a few minutes. The doctor is still running tests. Claire followed the nurse down the hallway to a small room where the little girl lay in a hospital bed, her blue eyes now open and alert. Without the monastery robe, dressed instead in a hospital gown, she looked impossibly small and vulnerable. When Claire entered the room, the girl's face lit up with recognition. Mom, she said, her voice weak but clear, is that really you? Claire rushed to the bedside, tears streaming down her face. Lily, oh my God, Lily, it's you! She gathered her daughter in her arms, feeling the solidity of her, the warmth, proof that this wasn't just another dream from which she would wake in despair. I knew it was you, Lily whispered against her shoulder. At the ceremony, I saw you and I just knew, even though they told me my mum was dead. Claire pulled back slightly to look at her daughter's face, memorizing every detail of how she had changed in 3 years. I never stopped looking for you, baby. Never. Claire stroked her daughter's cheek, hesitating before asking the question that had haunted her for 3 years. Lily, what happened that day at church? How did you... Who took you? Lily's expression clouded slightly, but she took a deep breath. It was Mr. Allen, she said quietly. After Sunday school ended, we were all in the play area waiting for the main service to finish. Ms. Evelyn was busy with some of the younger kids. There weren't many teachers that day. Claire's heart constricted. Mr. Allen, one of the Sunday school teacher, who had been cleared by police, who had seemed so genuinely devastated by Lily's disappearance. He came over to me, Lily continued, and said there were 2 men in the church garden who wanted to meet me. He said they could take me to a special place where I could talk to my father in heaven. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Lily's father, Claire's husband, had died when Lily was just 4. She had often asked questions about him, about heaven. I didn't want to go at first, Lily said, her voice small, but Mr. Allen said it was okay that you knew about it. So I went with him to the garden. There were 2 men there. They looked nice, but they had weird smiles. They gave me something to drink that tasted like cherry syrup. After that, I don't remember much until I woke up at a different place with my head shaved. Ms. Evelyn didn't see you go, Claire asked gently. Lily shook her head. She was helping Tommy with his craft. The garden is on the other side of the playground. No one saw us leave. Claire fought back a surge of anger. All this time, the police had cleared Mr. Allen based on CCTV footage showing him in the office during Lily's disappearance. But they had never considered that he might have delivered her to someone else before returning to establish his alibi. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Claire whispered, pulling Lily close again. "I'm so sorry that happened to you." "It's not your fault, Mom," Lily said with a wisdom beyond her years. "The bad men lied to Mr. Allen too. I heard them talking once. They told him they were special messengers who could connect people with heaven. I don't think he knew they were going to take me away forever." Claire made a mental note to tell the detective about this new information. If Mr. Allen had been manipulated by Ram's organization, there might be other victims, other children who had been targeted through religious manipulation. "I prayed for you," Lily said again, changing the subject. "Every night, just like Ms. Evelyn taught me. Even when I was supposed to be meditating, I would say the prayers we used to say together before bed. I remembered all of them." Claire smiled through her tears. "Ms. Evelyn will be so happy to know that. She never stopped praying for you either." A doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Whitmore, I'm Dr. Patel. I've been examining your daughter since she arrived. Physically, she appears to be in relatively good health, though somewhat malnourished. We found traces of several sedatives in her system, but they're clearing now." "Will there be lasting effects?" Claire asked worriedly. "It's hard to say with certainty," Dr. Patel admitted. "The psychological impact of her experience will likely require long-term therapy, but children are remarkably resilient, especially when they have strong support systems." Claire nodded, squeezing Lily's hand. "She'll have everything she needs." The detective appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Whitmore, Father Chen is awake. He's asking to speak with you if you're willing." Claire hesitated, looking at Lily. "It's okay, Mum," Lily said. "I think he was trying to help me. He was different from the others." "I'll stay with her," Nora offered from the doorway. Claire kissed Lily's forehead and followed the detective to another room where Father Chen lay, looking frail but conscious. His monk's robes had been replaced with a hospital gown, making him seem smaller somehow, more human. "Ms. Whitmore," he said weakly when she entered, "I am glad you found your daughter." "You knew," Claire said, not a question but a statement. "You knew she was my Lily." Father Chen nodded slowly. "I discovered the truth several months ago. Alex Ram built this network of fake monasteries years ago, and I was one of his earliest recruits. I believed we were offering spiritual guidance to lost souls, but over time I learned the truth, that he was trafficking children, using them as props in his spiritual tourism scheme." "So you contacted me," Claire said. "You sent that email." "Yes," Father Chen confirmed. "I couldn't directly tell you that your daughter was here. Ram's people were always watching, and I feared that they would harm the children if they found out. But I thought if you came, if you saw her yourself, and I arranged for her to be visible during ceremonies, hoping you would recognize each other." "Why didn't you just go to the police?" Claire asked. "I tried months ago, but I couldn't leave the monastery," Father Chen said, "and Ram has connections everywhere. When I sent Brother Tenzin and Brother Dondup during that attempt, 3 children vanished from our monastery the next day, a warning. I realized I had to be more subtle." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I stopped accepting new children. I began teaching the ones we had about their past lives, urging them to remember despite the rules against it. Ilara, Lily, was especially resistant to the conditioning. She always retained fragments of her former life. You see, I wasn't always a monk. I used to be one of them. But while faking the role, I read the Buddha book several times and it changed me. I deeply regret. I will—" "Thank you," Claire said softly, realizing that this man, despite his role in the organization, had ultimately helped reunite her with Lily. "But there are still other children there, other families torn apart." "I have names," Father Chen said, "records, hidden where Ram's people couldn't find them. I will tell the police everything." 2 days later, Claire and Lily were preparing to return to Oregon. The police had continued their investigation, arresting several more of Ram's associates and rescuing dozens of children from various monasteries throughout the mountains. Father Chen had provided invaluable information that authorities believed would eventually lead to Ram himself. As they waited for their flight at the Denver airport, Lily looked up at Claire. "Mum, can we call Ms. Evelyn when we get home and maybe go back to church?" Claire smiled, stroking her daughter's head, where soft blonde fuzz was already beginning to grow back. "Of course we can, sweetheart. I think Ms. Evelyn would love that." "I missed singing during praise time," Lily admitted. "And the crafts we used to make, the monastery was always so quiet. We weren't allowed to laugh or talk to our friends." Claire felt a pang of sorrow, thinking about all the moments of childhood Lily had missed. The birthdays, the school events, the simple joys of being a carefree kid. But there was also gratitude that they had a future together, a chance to create new memories. "We have a lot of catching up to do," Claire said, putting her arm around Lily's shoulders, "but we have all the time in the world now." As their flight was called, Claire gathered their few belongings and took Lily's hand. The past 3 years had been the darkest of her life, a time when she had abandoned not only her faith but her hope. Yet somehow, against all odds, light had found its way back in. She thought of Evelyn, who had never stopped believing that Lily would be found. She thought of Father Chen, who had risked his life to help reunite them. She even thought of Nora, a stranger who had become an ally in the most unexpected place. "Ready to go home?" Claire asked, squeezing Lily's hand. Lily nodded, her blue eyes, those incredible, unmistakable blue eyes that had helped Claire find her, sparkling with a mixture of trepidation and excitement for the future. "Ready, Mom," she said, and together they stepped forward.